It's a locked on crossover. BYU, UCF. Who wants this more and who's got more on the line?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF and Locked On Cougars. It's a Locked On crossover. I'm here with my good friend Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, to talk a little Cougar and night football here. Jake, thank you so much for joining the show, and thank you guys for making Locked On your first listen of every single day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. On today's show, we're going to talk about BYU's playoff hopes maybe hanging in the balance here, Jake. It was tough going into the last few weeks of last season. I thought they were a lock to make the playoffs. Could UCF play spoiler here? Then we're going to talk about just simply who wants this more, and at the end of the show, we'll give our reasons for why we think each team is going to win this game. Today's show is brought to you by our title sponsor, Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We appreciate them for sponsoring this segment. Let's start at the top here, Jake. This is weirdly the most important game of the season for BYU, in my opinion. It's one they should win. It's one that not a lot of people are going to give UCF a chance in, but the Knights are going to come out fighting, and there's something sweet about playing the role of spoiler here at the end of the season. But they've got their own motivations as well too. UCF could make a bowl game with a win here in Scott Frost's first year back in Orlando. BYU simply just has higher aspirations in this one, and that is the college football playoff. As I mentioned, they were primarily positioned to make this playoff last year. It fell apart over the last few weeks of the season. Doesn't look like it's going to fall apart now. You thought you'd have Jake Retzlaff coming into the season. We all know what happened there, but Bachmeier emerged as the savior. BYU didn't know they needed, man. Talk to me about BYU's playoff hopes here in this game and why this is a must-win for BYU over UCF.
Well, yeah, it is a must-win to your point, Mike, and the reason why is BYU just needs to keep winning. They win this game, they clinch the Big 12 title game appearance that they've been looking for. It would obviously, in theory, schedule a rematch against Texas Tech, which is the only loss on BYU's schedule to date. They're 10-1. You mentioned the fact that last season they came so close to a Big 12 title game appearance. We're looking like they were, you mentioned, in prime position for the playoff. Well, they are back in a similar position this year, and they have talked, I'm talking all the way back in late July when training camp kicked off. They wanted to go from what they called good to great. They remember they were good last year. They went 11-2. They were ranked in the top 15 in the final polls of the season, but they missed out on the Big 12 title game. They missed out on the playoff, and that's in their mind. Going from what was a good team in 2024 to great this year is everything they still control right now, and that is making the Big 12 title game and in hope that they can make the college football playoff, whether as the Big 12 champion or as an at-large bid.
Look, just to remind our listeners, and especially UCF fans, it was back-to-back losses versus Kansas and Arizona State in the month of November that really did BYU in. They had a win over Houston, obviously, but it was too late by that time. The Big 12 only got conference champion Arizona State into the college football playoff. But the way things are shaping up around college football, I think the Big 12 probably a little bit better position to get two teams into this playoff. Texas Tech can afford to stumble maybe down the stretch here, but as the higher ranked team, BYU cannot. What's the mood around this team headed into this one? It's the last game of the season, so there's no such thing as a trap game, but certainly you can get trapped into thinking, oh, we got this one in the bag. UCF, is sub 500. We're BYU, but you can't take these games lightly, man, because I'm telling you, pride is a weird thing, and I think the Knights have a lot of it down in Orlando.
Well, you're right. Pride comes before the fall, as they say, and that's what BYU learned last year. Is when they lost to Kansas, they allowed that to bleed over into that Arizona State game. And when they lost to Texas Tech this year, I talked to those of our Cougar fans who are everydayers and said, We are going to find out in the next couple of weeks if this BYU team learned their lesson from a season ago, and that meant not allowing that loss to linger, moving forward and continuing to win. Well, they've done just that. They bounced back with wins over TCU and Cincinnati, and the whole focus right now, and I'm telling you, talking to coaches and players out of BYU practice this week, their whole focus is on the UCF Knights. There has been no chatter whatsoever about the Big 12 title game, about a rematch against Texas Tech. That will come in time, but they know that they have a 60-minute football game that they got to take care of business first on Saturday, because if they don't win that, then much like last year, it could spiral out of control.
Jake, this is a stingy BYU scoring defense, allowing only 17 points, 0.5 points per game here. Your top three in the conference in rushing yards allowed at only 126 yards allowed per game. Maybe a little softer in pass defense at 201. That's not a ton, but there are not a lot of weaknesses, I feel like, defensively for BYU. In terms of total yards per game, you're third in the Big 12, allowing only 327 yards per game. If you're UCF, where do you find yards against the BYU? Because the run game has been very boom or bust for UCF.
Yeah.
Miles Montgomery returned from injury last week. Jay Nixon, those guys have been great home run threats at times, but they've struggled with consistency in running the ball. And it feels like if you can't run the ball in this one, I'm not sure where UCF finds yards against BYU.
Well, yeah, you're right. The whole defense that BYU is built under Jay Hill and Kalani Sitake is predicated on making teams one-dimensional. And what that means is they don't want you to run the ball, if at all, on them. And case in point, last week against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's got a very, very strong running game. Obviously, a two-headed monster in Tawee Walker, as well as Evan Pryor, They limited the Cincinnati Bearcats to 87 rushing yards, Mike. Absolute dominant, slowing down that rushing attack. And that's what this defense is predicated upon. They will make it so that in this case, Taven Jackson, if he is indeed going to be the quarterback for UCF in this game, they're going to force this game onto his arm. And if Taven Jackson proves equal to the task to lift UCF to a win with his arm, BYU will tip their cap. But they're wholly intent on making sure that UCF, or literally anybody they play against, is not going to be able to run the football first and foremost, because that's the biggest key in college football and in football in general, is if you can control the ground game, you got a really, really good chance to win football games.
You do have a really good chance to win football games. It's you got to keep. I feel like UCF is going to have to try to run the football to keep Bachmeier on the bench. And sometimes we say this all the time on our channel, the best defense can be an offense that just extends drives, man.
Yes.
Keep the other offense off the field and limit offensive opportunities.
And to your point, Mike, that's what BYU's offensive philosophy this year has been in many respects too. They're a ball control offense. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to just really control the narrative and the pace of that game. I think both of these teams, they understand what's at stake here, and we'll get more to the stakes overall for these two teams. But that's exactly BYU's philosophy offensively is, hey, if you can't get on the field offensively, you can't score on us.
Yeah, look, I couldn't help but notice last week versus Cincinnati, BYU ran 74 plays. They were 4-4 in the red zone, but they dominated time of possession, 38 minutes to 21. That would be an absolute disaster for UCF in this one. Again, I think UCF is going to have to win time of possession by at least 5 or 6 minutes if they expect it to be close in the fourth. I'm usually not negative Nancy going in to Saturday for UCF, and I've called some of the blowouts, but in the games that I feel like, hey, these guys are overmatched here in Scott Frost's first year. Yeah. It was definitely like I thought Baylor would be closer than it was. Honestly, I have not been impressed with Baylor so far this year, but they were too much for UCF, and going into Texas Tech, it was like, there's no chance. There's no shot here. I'm not sure that I'm at no shot in this game for UCF, but it certainly feels close to that. So I want to give Night Nation some hope. Yeah. If there was some hope that UCF could pull off an upset, how would you see that playing out?
UCF's going to have to turn BYU over multiple times and not turn all over themselves. And that's kind of been a hallmark of what BYU's done this year is that more often than not, they've won the turnover battle, and that margin's been decidedly in favor of BYU, and they've capitalized on those extra opportunities to ultimately put teams away. So yeah, it feels like if UCF's going to come into Provo on senior day and win this game, they're going to have to maybe pick off a pass or two from Bachmeier, which he has thrown some passes up that have been interceptable, and some teams have capitalized on it. In the case of like Texas Tech, other teams have not. Cincinnati missed out on 2 opportunities I thought that were golden last week that they didn't come away with, and that's you're going to have to force the hand of BYU in terms of getting the turnover margin in your favor, because that I talk about it all the time on my show. Turnover margin is absolutely critical to any and all success that football teams have in this day and age of college football. And for UCF to hang in this game, it feels like they're going to need to win that turnover margin and win it by a significant number.
Beat Cincinnati 26-14, but somehow 0 turnovers forced in that game. Cincinnati had 2. But again, I just could not help but notice BYU offensively 4-4 in the red zone, just really taking advantage of every other opportunity that existed on the field. Look, there's a lot at stake here, I think, for both teams in their own respects. Jake, obviously, a lot more at stake for BYU than UCF, but UCF's got their own stakes that they feel like are important to them. We're going to talk about who wants this more or what's at stake next on Locked On UCF and Locked On Cougars. It's a Locked On crossover. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game and want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on anything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can even combine all your bets into a same game parlay for a chance at an even bigger payout. This is my favorite thing to do. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers up to $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right, up to $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who wants this one more? What's on the line? As I mentioned, bowl game. You went 4-8 last year. UCF fans, Jake, they died a slow death at the end of Gus Malzahn's tenure. It was tough. I mean, it was hard watching an offensive coach be bad at the thing that he's supposed to be good at. And in year one for Scott Frost, a lot of people were looking for that offensive resurgence. It's the only way I think that UCF is going to have a chance in this one, is they're going to have some defined offense that they have not had really all year in the against good teams. You beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. You beat the North Carolinas. You beat the Jacksonville States. You beat the North Carolina A&Ts. You beat West Virginia. They were actually 0-4 versus West Virginia going into that matchup. You beat them soundly, but you lost all the ones that really mattered, that would have given this team something to really sink their teeth into and build on. Beating BYU would be that kind of win. However, at the end of the season, I'm a firm believer that you are who you've been the previous 12 games. When we get to week 13 or week 14, I don't expect to see a different team than the one we saw the first 12 games. I think you are who you are. I think you become someone different in the offseason. You're right. Your transfer off-season glow-ups, man, are a thing. In-season glow-ups, not so much, especially at the end here. But who do you think wants this one more? Do you think that it's BYU? How strong is the desire to kind of not really erase the past of what happened last year, but redeem themselves from last year's late season meltdown?
No, redemption is the perfect word here, Mike, because they know how close they were a season ago to living the dreams that they have still in front of them this season. So this is a BYU team. They want it bad, and it's nothing against UCF, because to your point, the end of the end of the last year, and then obviously rolling into the Scott Frost second go round here, there's a lot to play for UCF. To get to a bowl game in his first year be a really, really nice feather in his cap because they have a signature win, obviously, over BYU. But BYU has the playoff on the horizon. They have the Big 12 title game right there in their sights. They are not intent on letting any of that go. So I really do think that this means more for BYU simply because there's national glory and conference glory at stake here, and it's all within their control. All they got to do is keep winning, and if they do that, everything that they want to accomplish this season, having a chance to play for a national title, is right there in front of them.
Is UCF walking into a buzzsaw on this one? Like, is this team more motivated than they've ever been? And let me tell you something. I watched the Cincinnati game. I could not help but notice that they gave the ball to Martin 32 times for 222 yards. It's very rare in today's college football that you see a running back carry the ball 32 times.
Well, and not to mention he had 4 receptions. If I recall correctly, 3 or 4 receptions. So 35 touches in college football. That's an astronomically high usage rate. And I asked Kalani Sitake straight up, I'm like, did you redline him? Did you take him right to essentially the max that he could go? And Kalani said, no, we could have done more. And I'm like, oh, okay, hold on here. Like,
oh, wait, what? 50 carries?
I'm like, it feels like that's probably the max, especially considering he's not 100% healthy. He injured his shoulder against Iowa State, missed that Texas Tech game, and he's been battling through it. And to put on the performance he did against Cincinnati with 222 yards, which is a top 10 all-time performance in BYU football history, it was a masterclass. And he was dishing out as much punishment as he absorbed in that game, if not more. He is absolutely rolling right now. He's over 1,000 yards, and I think there's an argument for him to be the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. I know that quarterbacks probably will take the day on that in terms of winning that award, but he has been the kind of the main engine that's made this BYU offense do what it's done all season long, sans that Texas Tech game.
Yeah, thinking back over the years, there's only a few backs I can think of that were really built to carry the ball 30 times a game. RJ Harvey obviously was a very good running back, and he was underutilized. Of the top 10 running backs in the country last year in yards on the ground, RJ Harvey had the fewest carries of the top 10 running backs. And he had miles in the tank, but I think, man, I'm trying to think. I remember I'm gonna date myself here, but I'm going way back to 2013. I remember Trey Mason for Auburn carrying the ball like 30 times against Missouri in that SEC championship game for 300 yards. It was an incredible performance. I mean, I think it was like 40 carries or something like that. It was something nuts.
I'll pull one from BYU yesteryear. Remember Jamal Williams obviously played for the Saints, played for the Lions. He had a 200 and some odd, like 60-yard performance against Toledo in like 2015, where I'm fairly certain he was well north of 30 carries in that game alone. So this is kind of a harkening back to a past era of college football, because that what LJ Martin is putting out is absolutely remarkable. And to your point, guys like RJ Harvey, you look back in retrospect and say, how much more could you have gotten out of him at UCF? Well, BYU, they're finding out that they can get a whole lot of LJ Martin right now.
Well, I hope that they don't use them too much on Saturday, because again, they're going to grind yards out on the ground. It's going to be a long day for UCF. But Bachmeier last week had 13 carries as well, too, for 46 yards. Now, again, only 3.5 yards per carry, but he did add in a touchdown. He is a threat with his legs. How do you see this playing out on the ground? Are you going to go run heavy? Only 49 rushes to 25 pass attempts. Was that just the way it played out versus Cincinnati? Or can UCF fans expect a rush-heavy offensive attack here?
If BYU can get away with it, they will do that exact thing. They will put 50 carries they will 66% run versus 33% pass. They're totally fine with that, because the way that LJ Martin, and you mentioned guy like Bear Bachmeier, he's for a 19-year-old true freshman, he's 6'2", 230 pounds, and he's an absolute battering ram. And it's not like he carries in his upper body. Like, we had Portland State's head coach Bruce Barnum, who recently got fired, the very first game of the year, came out after the game, Mike, and called him a GD centaur. That was the direct quote he said about Bear Bachmeier, and it's kind of created. It's what's carried this entire season. Those two are a two-headed monster that is really hard to stop because they're well put together athletes. They run with authority, and they're not afraid to dole out the punishment. So if BYU can get away with it, Mike, yeah, UCF fans settle in because it could be a lot of running for BYU because they'd love nothing more than to run for 250 yards, pass for 150, and call it a night.
Yeah, Miles Montgomery is a little dinged up on the other side. Jaden Nixon, the transfer from Western Michigan, former Oklahoma State Cowboy. He's good, but at the end of the day, it's going to be tough. I think this is going to be a tough game for UCF trying to move the ball against this BYU defense. UCF has talent on the defensive side of the ball, and I would say Alex Grinch's defense actually has been the one of the bright spots, not only for UCF, but in the Big 12 defensively. They've been a really good defense at times this year. It's just when you can't move the ball, you leave your defense hanging out to dry a lot, and they get put in a lot of bad situations, turnovers in your own territory, and it hurts them statistically. But I have been impressed with the fight that Alex Grinch's defense has shown so far. I took a lot of heat from our fellow Big 12 hosts over Alex Grinch being like one of the worst hires. It's worked out pretty good so far.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing about this is Scott Frost has got this offensive rep. We all know that because they had such high-flying teams when he was at UCF before. But you're right. Kind of the undersold story of this UCF season has been that defense. You're right. They've been put in bad spots, and the metrics bear out that if you look at those just metrics simply, you have to look at context for what the defense has been able to produce, all things considered. And the fact that UCF is anywhere near bowl eligibility, that's actually a really, really nice hallmark of this first season of the Scott Frost second go-round in Orlando. And I'm out here in Utah, so we're about as far removed from each other, speaking of these two programs. But I can tell you, from my vantage point, UCF's on an upward trajectory, and this first season, even if it ends up where I expect it to go, or BYU wins handily on Saturday night, does not take away what UCF accomplished year one with Scott Frost and Alex Grinch.
Despite the outcome, if you're UCF, you got to show some fight in this one. You got to show some heart. You got to go out and you got to give them hell for as many quarters as you can. And look, at the end of the day, make BYU feel this one Sunday when they hit that ice bath. Be like, woo, we won that game. But, God, those guys came to play and they gave their effort. And that's – I know moral victories are for losers, man. I don't believe in moral victories. But I do believe in pride, and I do believe in not letting another team just do what they want. I think you have to try to out physical them. If for any reason Kalani Sitake's group comes in here and they take this game for granted, you got to be ready to exploit that. And if you have any hope, it's that you shell shock them early and then hope that they can't recover by the fourth quarter. That's it. That's what this boils down to me.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That feels like the recipe for an upset is exactly what you've got to jump on BYU early, maybe force a couple early turnovers that you cash in for touchdowns, and then have BYU reeling a bit. That's the only recipe I see for a potential upset here. But my expectation is the BYU, like I said, their focus because of what they hope to accomplish this season. I don't think they're going to take anything from UCF for granted. They are going to be wholly locked in on these on the nights, and they want to make sure that they finish the season off the right way.
Jake, we're going to get to our final break, and when we come back, we're going to play a little game and talk about our 3 reasons we feel like the Knights or the Cougars could win this one. We'll do that next, right after a quick word from our sponsors. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, fans in the stands. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets to the game can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why we use Game Time here at Locked On UCF, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app, and what did I see? The best college football games at the best prices. I'm talking prices as low as $25. They even have a great new feature called Zone Deals. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save crazy big on the prices. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Three reasons UCF could win this game. I'm not calling for a win here, but if for some reason you and I are texting each other after the game and UCF has won the game, it's going to be because UCF won the turnover battle.
Yeah.
Right. So my reason number one is turnovers. If this defense that I mentioned has been the strength of this team, really can come up with some timely turnovers. I hated to see them struggle with Oklahoma State this past weekend. It was disappointing to see them struggle with Oklahoma State because they're bad. Jake, they're bad. And I love my dude Cody, but even Cody admitted on our crossover last week that they are bad. And I want to remind everybody, Oklahoma State voted to finish 12 in the Big 12, UCF at 15. I think UCF is I think we're better than 15. I think we're like 13. Maybe.
No, I would flip-flop you. I'd have Oklahoma State dead last, obviously, but I think UCF, I think that 12 spot's probably a good spot for them to kind of land.
Yeah, all right, Jake. Jake, you're invited to the cookout, man, for saying that.
Thank you.
Turnovers, your defense, you have to be good at the things you're good at. You can't be good at the things, you can't be bad at the things you're supposed to be good at. And unfortunately for UCF, your offensive coach has a not very good offense in year one, especially against better teams. But your defense has been good all year, and you need them to be the best they've ever been on Saturday, and maybe you pull off the upset. Reason number two that I think that UCF wins this game, if they win it, it's going to be that BYU just didn't show up. Something is completely out of their control, but you need BYU to come back to the field in this one. And we're not going to sit here and pretend like BYU is not a more talented team than UCF. They are. Right now they are. And that's what off seasons and recruiting is for, right? Yeah. You have to just be, you've got to recruit your butt off, and you've got to close the talent gap so that the difference between game planning and talent isn't so wide that you can't fill what's in between. Mm-hmm. Right now, Scott Frost can't fill what's in between. There's no amount of coaching, there's no amount of game planning that's going to make you better on offense at this point in the season. Mm-hmm. Reason number three why I think that UCF could possibly win this game is, and again, it's a lot of intangible stuff here for UCF, because we're not going to sit here and pretend like they're more talented. It's you show up with more heart.
Yeah.
On Saturday, you have to essentially outplay them. You have to out hustle them. You have to out try them. And hear me on this. I've covered a lot of football. In college, I was actually a film guy for our football team, so I filmed every practice and game at a P4 school for 5 years. And holding that camera, I remember filming a guy. I don't know if you remember this guy, but he played defensive tackle in the league. His name was Jay Ratliff.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, absolutely.
Jay was on nobody's. He was a 2-star coming out of high school. He was on nobody's draft board. He was, for all intents and purposes, overlooked his entire career. Yeah. When I filmed his pro day, the pros talked about how good he was with his hands and like how much effort he put into every single thing he did during that pro day. And the scout was super impressed. I can't tell you how cool it was to see him make the Pro Bowl with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Played for the Bears. He had a pretty decent pro career, and Jay had more heart than everybody he went up against almost his entire life. And it showed up. And so those guys who got drafted and tried to rest on their talent, right? They lost their spot to him.
Sure.
Because he came to work, and they thought that their talent would take them there, and hard work sometimes is better than just feeling like I've got all this natural talent and that's going to, look, there are some guys who are there, but you know what? Those guys who fail the heart test but have tons of talent, those are the guys that miss opportunities to make the Hall of Fame and break records. And if you're UCF, you've got to just recognize that you can't afford to show up with no heart on Saturday because BYU is going to run you off the field. So those are my 3 reasons. Talk to me, my friend, about this BYU team. You cover them better than anybody I know.
Well, thank you.
Who are they, and why are they going to win on Saturday?
Well, here's the thing. You talk about the heart. That's the thing this BYU team has been built on in so many different ways. They like to play what they call complementary football, Mike, and that means offense helps special teams helps defense helps offense. All 3 phases play in concert with one another for BYU, and that's kind of been the hallmark of this season is all 3 phases outside of that game against Texas Tech where I felt like the offense and special teams absolutely hurt BYU in that game. They put it together, and that's what's led to this. So long as they play that complementary style they have really employed all year long, BYU should handle their business at home. The other thing that they have behind them that UCF fans are going to learn about again, because I know UCF's been a Pro Bowl before, is that Cougar Nation, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, is one of the most raucous, incredible atmospheres in college football. And, oh, by the way, you're coming to altitude. It's supposed to be really cold on Saturday. So the boys from Orlando better bundle up. That is, I don't mean to make it sound deal. I don't mean to make it a bad thing because I grew up here in Utah, obviously, but there's a combination of elevation and cold weather that burns your lungs more than anything that I know. And like I said, born and raised Utah, if I can tell you it's going to burn your lungs, kids coming from sea level from Orlando where it's beautiful weather year round, it feels like, get ready for that. That's going to play into this, it feels like. And I think that proverbial 12th man that Lavelle Edwards Stadium will provide is going to power BYU through this. And I just think the final thing is what we've already kind of talked about. BYU has everything within their grasp in terms of what they want to accomplish this year. Make the Big 12 title game, play for a Big 12 championship, and have that shot at the college football playoff. This is a program, speaking of BYU, that won a national title in 1984, Mike, and ever since then, the doors have been shut on them until they got into the Big 12 here. They want to have that chance to have another trophy in that trophy case. Is it going to happen this year? That's conversation for way down the line because they got a lot to approve between now and then. But they want to show that they are a national title contending type team, and the only way to do that is to win this football game. So I think that they're fully focused on sending their seniors out on the right note, but ultimately punching their ticket to the Big 12 title game and keeping those postseason dreams of playing for a natty alive.
Jake, great breakdown on BYU. Every time we talk, I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of BYU, but I am a fan of BYU fans. So, again, awesome job covering that team, my friend, and breaking it down here for UCF and BYU fans. So they're both fans know what we're walking into in this game here. Again, no delusions of grandeur, I think, on the UCF side, but certainly, again, there are things that go beyond just this game if you're Scott Frost that you can accomplish here on Saturday if you go in and you put up a fight and you let the cards fall where they may. I mean, maybe they get a little lucky and this is a game in the fourth quarter and you can make some legendary plays and start the beginning of the Scott Frost era off with something memorable that UCF fans will never forget. I don't know if it's in the cards for them on Saturday, but I know I'm going to be excited to watch it. I'll be texting you the whole time. I got it. Before we get out of here, I have to hold your feet to the fire, my friend. Give me a prediction here. What's the score on Saturday?
I'm going to say BYU 38, UCF 17. I think BYU handles their business at home and gets a pretty sizable victory, and that whole conversation about style points in the college football playoff committee come into the mix. I don't think we can ignore that also being a part of this.
Yeah, I'm going to go BYU 42, UCF 21.
Okay, yeah, so we're 21-point different, and that kind of goes in line covering the spread, which is sitting at 17.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. So I think it kind of sits right in line with everything that we got going on here.
Guys, do us a favor, hit the video, the comments after the video. Let us know what you think, who wins and why, and give us your score predictions. Tell us who you think will win and why it's BYU. Look, we're going to go on and get out of here. But I want to thank everybody out there for making Locked On your first listen of every single day. And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow with more Locked On UCF and Locked On Cougars. It's a Locked On crossover.